إن الحمد لله تعالى نحمده ونستعين به ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله تعالى من شرور أنفسنا وسيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله تعالى فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ونبيه ورسوله يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما. After praising Allah Azza wa Jal and reminding myself and you with the taqwa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and testifying that none is worthy of our worship and our devotion but Him, Jalla Jalaluh, the mighty and majestic and exalted, alone without any partners, and that the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam was without doubt his Prophet and his servant and his messenger. And after welcoming my brothers and sisters to the house of Allah Azza wa Jal, for another blessing we cannot thank Him for, another day in His house, another Friday upon His obedience. We all know that the Sahaba, the companions of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, were very different. They were very special. They were very receptive. All it took was an ayah or one advice from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, or even from each other, that would cause permanent change and deep, meaningful change in their life. That is why it is no surprise that when it comes to such an emphasized topic and a foundational topic in Islam, like being careful with your tongue, they are all on the same wavelength. They all have left behind beautiful examples for us to recalibrate, to realize how far we are from the ideals of our Islam and how much we should continue to work towards them. If I were to simply relay to you the ayat and ahadith that speak about the importance of watching, guarding your tongue, what you say, for the next 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 khutbahs, without any sort of reflections, thoughts or commentary, there would be enough. But they understood, as one of these ahadith says, to summarize it all, that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was not exaggerating when he said, "Man samata naja," whomever keeps silent is saved. Abdullah ibn Mas'ud radiallahu anhu, one of these great Sahaba, one of the leading Sahaba, he says about this concept, and it is reflected in all of their statements. He says, لَيْسَ عَلَى وَجْهِ الْأَرْضِ شَيْءٌ أَحْوَجَ إِلَى طُولِ سِجْنٍ مِنْ لِسَانِ هَذَا. There is nothing on the face of the earth that is more deserving of a lengthy prison sentence than this tongue of mine. Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, who was the leader of this ummah in reciting the Quran, who the Prophet ﷺ said to people, go to him to hear the Quran fresh as if it were just revealed. The Prophet ﷺ had centralized Ibn Mas'ud because how focused Ibn Mas'ud was by day and night on reciting Quran with that tongue. Abdullah ibn Mas'ud was of the Sahaba whose body was very frail, and so he would not fast as much voluntarily so that he can put in more hours in reciting Quran. It was everything for him. And yet he still realized that his tongue could destroy him. Nothing on the face of the earth, he says, deserves to be locked away for longer than this tongue of mine. He understood from the words of the Prophet ﷺ, it's the only way to be saved, that I too have to still be vigilant. Because all it takes is one word sometimes that could destroy a person. The Prophet ﷺ said that a person may say a statement, لا يلقي لها بالا, without paying much attention to it. Not an innocent accident, but not paying much attention to it. لا يظن أنها تبلغ ما بلغت. He will never think that it would reach what it reaches. يلقي يهوي بها في النار 70 خريفا, that will cause him to fall, a free fall, into the fire for 70 years because of it. Ibn Mas'ud understood that I have to keep my words as my prisoners, or else I become its prisoners. I become the prisoner of my statements if I don't take advantage of keeping them, the ability to keep them locked between my jaws and to keep them my prisoners. Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu, another of the great Sahaba, he used to tell the people, "Man kathura kalamuhu kathura saqatu." Whoever is easygoing about this subject and speaks much will slip much. وَمَنْ كَثُرَتْ سَقَطُهُ كَثُرَتْ ذُنُوبُهُ. Whoever slips much will have many sins. You're not going to wind up being excused for all of these slip-ups. Not all of them are going to be innocent because you were reckless. He says, وَمَنْ كَثُرَتْ ذُنُوبُهُ كَانَتِ النَّارُ أَوْلَى بِهِ. And whomever sins are much, then the fire has priority over such a person. You know, they were so careful about this, the Sahaba, and I'll move on now, even some examples from the Tabi'een, that they would even include in that circle of concern words that weren't even words. They would be careful or worried about the groans they made sometimes when they were sick. Al-Imam Ahmad, whose generations later, rahimahullah, was sick once, and he kana ya'innu aninan. He used to make wincing sounds in his sickness. So one person said to him, "O Imam, did you hear what Tawus," one of the earlier tabi'een, he said to him, what Tawus used to say about the ayah, مَا يَلْفِظُ مِنْ قَوْلٍ إِلَّا لَدَيْهِ رَقِيبٌ عَتِيدٌ. No person utters anything except that there are sentinel angels, recording angels there that are watchful and ready. They're never absent-minded and you're never speaking too fast. Watchful and ready, always. He says, Tawus said that even includes aninul marid, the groans of the sick person. You may think, how can this make sense? I can't control this. You're right, but they were wiser than that. Not every single time you moan when you're sick, you're doing it because you can't control it. So you have to figure out. They had this idea of which one was it. Was I really, did it come out inadvertently, or am I trying to get people to feel bad for me as if I'm complaining to the creation about the creator? As if I'm saying indirectly, look what Allah did to me. They're afraid that that may be the hidden driver behind that moan. So that was their level of vigilance, rahimahumullah. And they would, so as you saw with Imam Ahmad, they would help each other stay at that level of care because they understood how dangerous this could be. You know, one of the scholars as well, Al-Mu'afa ibn Imran, rahimahullah, one of his students said to him in the winter time, "Ma ashad al-bard." Man, it's really cold, isn't it? So he said back to his student, "Adafi't al-an." Are you warm now? Meaning, what is the point of telling me it's cold? I know it's cold and you know it's cold. So, did it help you now that you said it's cold? We're not saying it's haram to say it's cold. No one is saying this. We're not even saying it's wrong to say it's cold. And he probably would not have said this if this wasn't his student. He is just simply trying to teach him a lesson that get into the habit of being mindful of what you're saying. You know, it actually may even be rewardable. When I see someone enter the masjid and I'm looking for some reason to start a conversation with him for a good reason, I could be rewarded for saying whatever comes to mind of the halal because of the intention behind it. But it's as if he's telling him, is there an intention behind it? Or are you one of those people in the habit of speaking mindlessly? Because that's dangerous. That's what he's trying to say. He's trying to tell him that the ideal in Islam is that unless you've confirmed, this is the ideal. We're not saying you have to. The ideal in Islam is until you confirm that there is greater benefit in speaking, you don't speak. Because the Prophet ﷺ said that, didn't he? فَلْيَقُلْ خَيْرًا. Let him say something that is good. Meaning you've confirmed that it's good. It's the greater good. To speak, then keep silent. It's not equal even. It's clear to you it's better to speak. Whoever knows that it's good to speak, let him speak. Otherwise, he should keep silent. That's the ideal. And the Sahaba said that the Prophet ﷺ, when they described him as this ideal. They said, كَانَ قَلِيلُ الْكَلِمِ. He would speak little, alayhi salatu wassalam. وَكَانَ لَا يَتَكَلَّمُ إِلَّا فِي مَا يَرْجُو ثَوَابَهُ. And he would only speak in things Not just that were halal, but that he was hopeful to be rewarded for. Alayhi salatu wassalam. May Allah help us climb that mountain and work towards that, inshaAllah. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله العظيم لي ولكم. الحمد لله وحده والصلاة والسلام على من لا نبي بعد أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ونبيه ورسوله. So this concept of just being more mindful of your tongue, not letting it run wild, keeping it your prisoner before you become its prisoner, happens in stages, just to be practical before we leave the minbar. You know, having filters, you need the most important filter first. And that is, what is the most important the ideal we already stated. The ideal is, unless it's beneficial, don't do it. Some of the early Muslims, they competed in that. Some of them used to put little pebbles in their mouth, by the way, like marbles, basically, so that when he wanted to speak, he would slow himself down. I'd have to remove them so I can speak. And so it would give me time to think it over a little bit more. Filters, right? To slow yourself down. Because of how serious they took this. So, is there a need? Is there a greater benefit in speaking? That's the ideal. I don't want to speak about the ideal anymore. The bare minimum filter a Muslim should have is, am I allowed to say this? To begin with. And the things that the tongue is prohibited from saying, they are so many. It's not just, you cursing at someone, or you backbiting someone, or you lying about someone. It's also you mentioning your good deeds when there is no necessity to do so, or without the right intentions. Should I really say that? It could also be that you endorse or you support someone based on hearsay. Yeah, go ahead. He's a good man. Let your daughter marry him. When you had no right to say that. There's so many. They're endless. Passing verdicts on things that you know nothing about. We live in a very interesting time. We have to realize this is very interesting. That we in a moment can pass a verdict on something that is happening beyond the oceans. Right? You read a headline and say, yeah, that animal who raped that woman. Right? You don't even know, not the animal, supposedly. You don't know the person who's relaying to the information who they are. Who even wrote the article. Who is behind this news story. They had every right to do this. They didn't have every right to do that. And this brings me to my even more practical step. The more you see, the more you will say. That is why our Prophet ﷺ told us what? On top of بِحَسْبِ امْرِئٍ مِّنَ الْكَذِبِ أَنْ يُحَدِّث بِكُلِّ مَا يَسْمَعُ. It's enough of a lie for a person to just share the things he hears. That's a lie. To share it without confirmation. But he told us, إِيَّاكُمْ وَالظَّنَّ فَإِنَّ الظَّنَّ أَكْذَبُ الْحَدِيثِ. Beware of speculation, because it's one of the surest ways to lie. He said what? وَلَا تَحَسَّسُوا وَلَا تَجَسَّسُوا. So don't investigate and do not spy. Tajassasu is spying. We all know that spying is haram. He says, don't probe. Don't inquire. Curb your curiosity so you can curb your tongue. And he said, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, in the other hadith that we will build on, inshallah, in future khutbahs, أَمْسِكْ عَلَيْكَ لِسَانَكَ وَلْيَسَعْكَ بَيْتُكَ. Didn't he? He said, hold your tongue and let your house be enough for you. This is the laser focus of the believer. The mind your business in the right way to understand it of the believer. Me, my house, my masjid, my locality, what I actually have an effect on is what I should be concerned about. But when I allow myself to see other things, I will start saying unnecessary things that I'm not allowed to say in the first place. May Allah Azza wa Jal help us and you be better at curbing our tongues. And forgive the speaker of these words for his words that don't match his actions. May Allah Azza wa Jal forgive us and purify us and guide us and elevate our ranks. And help us appreciate silence. Help us appreciate and act on the silence that was the pattern, the model, the balance of our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, where we stick to it where it could harm or where it may not benefit, and we speak in ways that will always be in our best interests in this world and the next. May we appreciate silence so people respect us more. May we appreciate silence so that we listen better and learn more. May we appreciate silence so that our profile in front of the Lord of the worlds is the best that it can be on the Day of Judgment. Allahumma ameen. Allahumma اغفر للمسلمين والمسلمات والمؤمنين والمؤمنات الأحياء منهم وارحم الأموات. اللهم حسن أخلاقنا. اللهم حسن أخلاقنا. اللهم حسن أخلاقنا واغفر لنا زلاتنا. وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين.